It's hard at times to imagine the depravity of some people. We've gone through a lot of true crime cases in this series, but few have affected me as much as this one. A pregnant woman and her 2 young daughters go missing, and instead of being concerned, terrified, and upset, the remaining family member, the expectant father, spends his time while they're missing making protein shakes and walking the family dog, while smirking through interviews while he unconvincingly begs his missing family to come back. Unfortunately, this story isn't one with a happy ending of a family being reunited, but ends with the most prominent family annihilator of our time. This is a brief history of Chris Watts. As always, this episode of A Brief History contains graphic content and may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Christopher Lee Watts was born on May 16, 1985 in Spring Lake, North Carolina, to parents Ronnie and Cindy Watts. Ronnie and Cindy both described Chris as a normal child who was, quote, easygoing like his dad. Throughout his young life, according to his parents, Chris never showed any signs of concerning behavior, and they were quick to note that he had never had a temper, either as a child or through his adult life. Shanann Watts, née Rusek, was born on January 10, 1984, in Passaic County, New Jersey, to parents Frank and Sandra Rusek. Shanann was described as incredibly happy and caring, despite suffering from lupus. Both Frank and Sandra had come from an economically challenged background, but worked hard to provide a good life for Shanann and her brother Frankie. Frankie described her as someone they could always count on to be there for them, but many, including her brother Frankie, said that it felt like her marriage to Chris Watts hindered Shanann's happiness. Eventually, the family moved to North Carolina, where Shanann spent much of her childhood and young life. Shanann and Chris met in 2010 on social media when Chris sent Shanann a Facebook friend request. In a Facebook video Shanann shared on her profile, she stated, "I got a friend request from Chris on Facebook. I was like, what the heck, I'm never gonna meet him. Except, one thing led to another, and 8 years later we have 2 kids, we live in Colorado, and he's the best thing that ever happened to me." The couple married in November 3rd, 2012 in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Chris and Shanann moved to Colorado soon after the wedding. Initially, Shanann's parents loved Chris and thought he was perfect for their daughter. They remembered their early days of dating, stating how obvious it was he was in love with Shanann, referring to him as a doting husband and father who would do anything for his family. The Watts family, however, was another story. Both Cindy and Ronnie described their relationship with Shanann as tumultuous at best, and they worried for their son, stating that he had changed after he married Shanann. The Watts family claims that she was both abusive and had isolated him from his family by forcing them to move to Colorado prior to the birth of their first daughter, Bella. The couple moved to Colorado and purchased a 5-bedroom house in Frederick in 2013. Chris began working for Anadarko Petroleum, while Shanann initially worked at a children's hospital in Colorado, but eventually left and became a work-from-home direct sales consultant for the multi-level marketing company Thrive. The same year, the couple's first daughter Bella was born, followed by her sister Cece just 2 years later. The family of Shanann were quick to describe her as a doting mother who was so excited to have children, while the family of Chris Watts continued to maintain a shaky relationship with their daughter-in-law and subsequently their grandchildren. In 2013, Shanann and Chris were making a combined $150,000 a year. The following year, in 2014, it dropped down to $90,000 a year. And finally, in 2015, it was shown that the couple was making a combined $40,000 a year. Between Shanann's lupus medical bills, the couple's credit card debt, student loan payments, HOA fees, the mortgage, car payments, they were in over their head and unable to afford their lifestyle. In June of 2015, shortly before the birth of their second daughter, Cece, the couple filed for bankruptcy and were also fighting a lawsuit brought against them by the Homeowners Association for unpaid HOA fees. When filing for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, it was revealed that the couple had more than $400,000 in debt, despite taking trips to Punta Cana, New Orleans, Toronto, and Las Vegas, seemingly all paid for by Shanann's company Thrive. The bankruptcy filing gave the couple a new start and allowed them to keep their home and assets. It was in June of 2018 that life would really change for the couple, however. On June 11, 2018, Shanann surprised Chris with a pregnancy announcement by wearing a t-shirt that said, "Oops, we did it again." Chris's reaction was fairly lackluster, with him simply stating, "That's awesome." That same month, Chris began talking more and more to a female coworker who worked in the environmental office at his company, Nicole Kessinger. Chris and Nicole began spending more and more time together fairly quickly, with them meeting up outside of the office setting 4 or 5 times a week. Chris had allegedly told Nicole that he was separated and going through a divorce, and they soon began a physical relationship. By the end of July 2018, Chris had told Nicole that his divorce to Shanann had been finalized, and they were free to see each other as they pleased. Chris took advantage of any opportunity he had around Shanann to talk to or see Nicole, and it's claimed that Nicole was none the wiser that he had never even asked for a divorce, let alone was divorced. At the end of July 2018, Shanann and the kids traveled back to North Carolina for 5 weeks to visit family, with Chris supposedly following soon after. During the interim between Shanann, Bella, and Cece leaving, and Chris joining them in North Carolina, Nicole Kessinger spent some time at the Watts house before the adulterous pair went away to the Great Sand Dunes National Park for an evening of romance. The following day, Chris traveled to North Carolina to be with his family. The romance between Chris and Nicole was a whirlwind, and just barely 2 months since they started seeing each other, Nicole was found to be looking at wedding dress options online, clearly with the intent of marrying her newly divorced beau. During the time of their family trip to North Carolina, it's found that the seemingly perfect relationship between Chris and Shanann had been deteriorating. Text messages between the couple later revealed that Shanann felt something was off with Chris, and felt as though her husband didn't want to talk to her. She also confided these feelings in her friends. Relations between Shanann and her in-laws didn't get any better at this time. Shanann rightfully exploded when her mother-in-law exposed her allergic daughter to nuts in an ice cream sundae she had served the girl. Shanann was even more furious with Chris's reaction. She felt he didn't stand up for his daughter in the way that he should have when she was exposed to a deadly allergen. Chris became colder and colder towards Shanann as his feelings for Nicole grew, and it was becoming obvious to Shanann that something was going on with her husband. On August 9, 2018, Shanann left for Arizona for a business trip, but also texted her friend that her and Chris had shared a great conversation the evening before, and it was their, quote, best talk yet. While away on her trip, Chris enjoyed the time apart from his wife. He hired a babysitter for the girls and took Nicole out on dates with his free time, while Shanann spent her free time on the trip writing a speech to talk to her husband about the distance she felt in their relationship. Shanann arrived home in the early morning hours on August 13, 2018. Later that morning, Chris woke Shanann up and confessed his affair with Nicole Kessinger. Despite Shanann's pregnancy, Chris explained to her that their marriage wouldn't last, and Shanann rightfully exploded, saying that she would never let Chris see the kids again. Chris flew into a rage and strangled Shanann to death in their bedroom. The noise of the fight woke up their oldest daughter, 4-year-old Bella, who walked in the master bedroom only to see her mother lying on the floor. Bella asked what was wrong, and Chris explained that Mommy was sick, and they needed to get her help. Chris wrapped up the body of Shanann and put it into his truck, along with both Bella and Cece. Chris drove them all to a worksite of his where he smothered both Bella and Cece in the backseat of his truck. Later, Chris admitted that his oldest Bella had fought back for her life and had bitten her tongue numerous times before finally perishing. At the worksite, Chris buried his wife's body in the ground on the site and stuffed both Bella and Cece through 8-inch gaps in an oil tank. At 5:15 that same morning, Chris left for work for the day, after just having murdered his entire family. Later that day in the afternoon, a friend of Shanann became concerned that she hadn't heard from her after returning from her trip, and grew even more concerned when she realized that Shanann hadn't shown up for her doctor's appointment. That friend, Nicole Atkinson, not to be confused for the mistress Nicole Kessinger, eventually called police and requested they do a wellness check. Upon arrival at the house, Chris stated that Shanann had said she was taking the kids to a friend's house, but her keys, purse, and cell phone were all found on the counter in the kitchen, leading police to believe something more nefarious had taken place. Playing dumb, Chris Watts cooperated with police and tried desperately to come off as the concerned father and husband whose pregnant wife and children were missing. In some truly horrific footage available to watch online, Chris spoke to the media, pleading for his family's safe return. But in watching the footage, it doesn't feel as though he's upset, worried, or concerned in the slightest. Throughout the interview, he paces and can't seem to stand still. His voice is clear, calm, and direct, with no emotion detected. And the worst bit is throughout the interview where he is begging for his wife and daughters to return while fully knowing where they were, he's smiling and smirking. Par for the course for someone who thinks they just got away with murder. Just 2 days later, on August 15th, 2018, after a massive search had taken place looking for Shanann and the girls, Chris Watts agreed to, and failed, a polygraph test, and then quickly confessed what he had done to his father. Or partially confessed. Chris told his father, Ronnie Watts, that he had watched Shanann smother both Bella and Cece on the baby camera. Grief-stricken at having watched his wife kill their daughters, Chris said he had no other choice than to kill his wife Shanann. The same day, Chris was fired from his job and was arrested. The bodies of Shanann, Bella, and Cece were all found the following day at the Anadarko petroleum site. Chris Watts was charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder, including 1 additional count per child, the unlawful termination of a pregnancy, and 3 counts of tampering with a deceased human body. The trial was a media circus. From the time of Shanann's disappearance to Chris being charged with his various crimes, it had just been over a week, and the public went from being hopeful that Shanann and the girls would be found safe and healthy to absolute disgust at Chris Watts for having seen him just days earlier beg and plead for the safe return of his family, knowing full well what he had done to them. The Watts family maintained to this day that their son is, quote, not a monster, and that they believed him when he said he didn't kill his daughters, despite the obvious evidence and charges proving that he did. In response, Shanann's family released the following statement. Monday evening, the parents of Chris Watts gave an interview in which they attempted to defend their son. In doing so, they felt the need to make vicious, grotesque, and utterly false statements about Shanann. Their false statements, however hurtful and inaccurate, will never alter the truth about Shanann, and will never alter the truth about the crimes committed by their son Chris Watts. Shanann's memory and reputation deserves to be protected, and her family is fully prepared to do so. On November 6, 2018, Chris Watts pled guilty to all counts charged against him, and Shanann's family requested that the state did not seek the death penalty for his crimes. On November 19, 2018, Chris was given 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole, 48 years for the unlawful termination of a pregnancy, and 36 years for disposing of the bodies. In 2019, during an interview with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, Chris explained in details the event of that morning. The interview is available to listen to online, but be aware that it is graphic and highly upsetting. Chris Watts is still incarcerated at Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin, where he was moved for safety concerns. This is a story that I have avoided doing for a long time, and I generally try to keep my thoughts and opinions out of my brief history videos, but I would be lying if I didn't say that Chris Watts disgusted me like no one else possibly could. What happened to Shanann, Bella, and Cece was tragic and unnecessary, and I hope that Chris Watts rots in prison, racked with guilt over what he did. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching this episode of A Brief History. Thank you to my patrons who support this series. You are much appreciated. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime Sims content every Friday or Saturday. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.